Hello, friends. How are you, dear students? This is your friend and mentor, Dr. Sunil Kanal, along with Anubhavi Foundation. We are coming with the revision lectures on science. We have already recorded something for you that is on gravitation. Now, the more exciting chapter on science, too, that is the heredity and evolution. A very nice chapter, interesting chapter, and it is again for 3 marks with options 5 marks, and a very important chapter because it has a lot of objectives, lot of interesting facts and other things. Now, friends, heredity and hereditary changes. What is heredity? It is actually the transmission of characters from one generation to another generation. We sometimes say, अरे ये बच्चे का तो चेहरा जो है माँ के ऊपर गया है या डैडी के ऊपर गया है, ऐसा हम लोग क्यों बोलते हैं? बिकॉज दे आर हेरिडिटरी factors which are transmitted from one generation to another generation. It would not have been possible for us to understand anything about heredity and variation without the pioneer work of Gregor Johann Mendel. He is called as father of modern genetics because he had studied something on Pisum sativum plant, his research which was for years together, and therefore we came to know something about heredity and hereditary changes. He talked about the genes which he called them as factors. Of course, you have studied in details about that in the ninth standard. Then there were other people, other scientists who have also studied something about variation, heredity, and hereditary changes. Okay, and their contributions were really very, very important for the development of genetic science or genetics. Okay, in 1901, the reasons behind the sudden changes were understood. Now, the mutational theory was studied by this very great scientist, Hugo de Rice, in 1901. He understood what are the sudden changes which are occurring in the gene patterns or in the genetic codes, and therefore we came to know something about mutations. In 1902, Walter Sutton observed the paired chromosomes in the cells. He was the first person to understand that the cells had chromosomes in pairs. In which organism he saw that? He saw that in grasshopper. Important for fill in the blanks too. In 1904, two of the scientists, Avery MacLeod and McCarthy, it was, I suppose, 1944, Avery MacLeod, McCarthy, and uh, these people have and MacLeod had proved that living organisms have genetic material as DNA. So DNA is the main genetic material except viruses. Virus have RNA as a genetic material. Some virus do have DNA as a genetic material. In 1961, Francois Jacob and Jack Monod proposed an important model for the process of protein synthesis with the help of DNA in bacterial cells. They said that DNA was the pioneer or was important molecule, a biomolecule, a biggest biomolecule, which is required for the production of proteins. And then came Watson and Crick model of DNA. Watson and Crick had proposed in 1953 a very important double helix structure of DNA, which for which they were awarded the Nobel Prize in 1962. You can see on the screen itself a DNA model, okay, which again you had studied in the ninth standard, a very important structure. DNA, when the discovery and the proposal of the structure was given, it was a breakthrough in the world of biology because DNA has helped us to understand so many things, so many aspects of our life, so many aspects of living world and the evolutionary factors too. Now, the important thing is that in our body, the main functions are controlled by various proteins, and protein synthesis occurs with the help of DNA where, through RNA. Means what? The DNA will help in production of proteins with the help of RNAs, and that occurs with the help of transcription, translation, and translocation. Transcription, translation, and translocation. Together, it is called as central dogma. The total process of the production of proteins from DNA through RNA is called as central dogma. Again, an important aspect. If you are going for medical sciences, this is a very important subject to know, and also a very important subject for research. Okay. In our portions, transcription has been deleted for this year, but translation and translocation are there. Okay, let's come back to that. So what is translation? The mRNA, which is formed in the nucleus from the DNA, carries the message for the production of proteins to the ribosomes in the cytoplasm. And in the ribosomes, the messages are deciphered or understood by tRNA, and the translation of message occurs with carrying or catching the amino acids from the cytoplasm and bringing it to the ribosomes for attachment, because any protein is made up of, it's a polypeptide chain which is made up of many amino acids which are linked by the peptide bonds or the peptide linkages. And then, as the amino acids are attached, there is translocation of the uh, that is the proteins, that is amino acid, and there's a translocation of the ribosome to the next triplet of codons, that is the nucleotide bases or the nitrogen bases. And from that, so one nitrogen base is made, that is one triplet codon is made up of three nitrogen bases, which will give message for one amino acid. And that amino acid can be understood, that message can be understood by tRNA with the help of anticodons, and they will bring the amino acids from the cytoplasm. The tRNA or the transfer RNA, also called as soluble RNA, is responsible for understanding the codon message, and they have anticodons to catch the amino acid for the same, to bring it to the ribosomes. In this way, the triplet codons were understood. The pioneer work on triplet codon was done by Dr. Hargobind Khurana, who was an Indian scientist of Indian origin who was living in United States, and he said that in all there are total 20 amino acids in the universe. On this 20 amino acids, the permutation and combinations of various amino acids bring about the synthesis of various proteins. For this, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for the same. Now comes to a very important topic of mutation. Now, what is mutation? We always talk about the hereditary changes, that is, living organisms can produce new individuals like themselves, and like begets like. We have always been saying this theory that like begets like. But what happens is the transmission of characters from one generation to the next generation occurs with the help of the genes. So genes are the transmitters of the hereditary characters. But sometimes what happens during the genetic transmission or hereditary transmission, there can be, or during meiosis, that is cell division of meiotic division, there can be sudden changes occurring in the gene pattern because of the nucleotide base changes. And these changes can be seen outside, they can be visible outside, either as minor changes or major changes, and that is called as mutation. Example, mutation can cause a genetic disease like sickle cell anemia. Again, a hereditary and a genetic disorder which does not have much treatment, and we have, of course, we are doing a lot of research on that to get the best out of the treatment for sickle cell anemia. So we move ahead with our topic. Let's see something about evolution. When we talk of evolution, it is a gradual change which is appearing in living organisms over a long period of time. That is,
आई वुड ऑलवेज से कि हम अपने बड़ों को साष्टांग नमस्कार करते हैं। अपने बड़े बुजुर्ग लोग जो रहते हैं, दादा दादी नाना नानी, वैसे ही अगर कभी आपने अमीबा का स्लाइड देख लिया, ओके, या आपने कभी माइक्रोस्कोप में पैरामोशियम या अमीबा देखा, यूनिसेलुलर ऑर्गेनिजम्स देखे, मैं तो सजेस्ट करूंगा कि उनको भी आप एक साष्टांग नमस्कार कर ही लीजिए, क्योंकि वो तो हमारे ग्रेट 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 एंसेस्टर्स हैं, क्योंकि उनमें से ही तो हमारा चेंजेस हुआ है, उनमें से ही तो हम आए हैं। सो एवोल्यूशन इज अ ग्रेजुअल चेंज अकरिंग इन plants and animals, or in all living organisms, which bring about the development of new organisms from the old ones. And this is not a very fast process. It occurs through ages. It has taken lots of time. Okay, 3.5 billion years, and the earth has evolved so much that we see today's organism. And has the evolution stopped? No, it's a change which is continuous, though it is not visible every day, but it is occurring every moment of time. And this is what the process is, which helps in development of organisms. And we see them in stages, from simple unicellular organisms to multicellular and complex organism. It has occurred through ages, and it has helped in the evolvement or the evolution of biosphere. So this is what is evolution. Formation of new species due to the changes in specific characters takes place through a gradual changes in the genetic characters, in the hereditary characters, and this occurs by natural selection. And thus we can define evolution as formation of new species due to changes in specific characters of several generations of living organism, as a result of which new organisms are created by natural selection. This is called as evolution. So what are the various evidences of evolution? We would thank Charles Darwin for his theory on evolution and origin of species, the book which he had written, and he gave various detailed evidences for evolution. What are evidences means? Evidences means the examples from which we can understand that evolution has occurred. The very first concept of evidence is the morphological evidence. Now, if you see these organisms, okay, if you see a dog or a sheep or a fox, you can see they have the similarities in characteristics. Okay, the external features are characteristic features can be seen properly. Example, in the plants also, the leaves, the fruits, they have, so all green plants will have leaves, the branches, they will have fruits. Similarly, the organisms above in the picture, or else in the on the side of the screen, you can see they have the same alignment of the position of eyes, nose, okay, ears, etc. And this helps to understand that we have evolved from common ancestors. That is called as morphological evidence. Morphology means study of external body characters, and this helps us to understand the morphological characteristics or evidences. Okay, now next is anatomical evidences. If we carefully observe the pictures on the side screen, we can see that human hand, or the foreleg of ox, then patagium of bat, okay, or flipper of whale, they have almost similar setup of bones and similar structures inside. This shows that anatomically we had common ancestors. Again, the same thing, evolution occurs from common ancestors, and new organisms are developed from the older ones. Human hand, foreleg of ox, flipper of the whale, and patagium of bat have similar characters. Thus, anatomical evidence also gives the example of evolution. The next is vestigial organs. Again, a very interesting topic. Now, if you have ever seen a dog, a pet dog at your house or somewhere, and if he happens to hear some sound, his ears stand up. Okay, they have a movable pinna or the ears. But here, sometimes teachers pull our ears. Okay, but can we move it? No, because we have the ear muscles here, which have been in use earlier, but now they are not in use. So we are coming to a very important concept of vestigial organs. Degenerated or underdeveloped useless organs of organisms are called as vestigial organs. Example, you can see in the pictures here the vermiform appendix, the ear muscles, then the wisdom tooth, okay, and the coccyx bone. These are all the various examples of vestigial organs in human beings. Such organs are seen in different phases of disappearance in different animals. Such organs, they are non-functional in certain organisms, but they may be functional in other organism. Example, when I talk of appendix, appendix is a very useful part of intestine in herbivorous animals. But since we are eating cooked food and our we eat our food or the green vegetables also by cooking them, our use of this vermiform appendix has decreased, and hence it has become a useless or a non-functional organ in our human beings or in our system. Okay, it may be functional in other organisms, as I told you, in herbivorous animals. Yes, it is very, very useful, while it is not in our case. Now, let's talk of paleontological evidences. What are paleontological evidences? Paleontology means study of fossils. What are fossils? The remains of plants and animals or their imprints deep into the soil are called fossils. Okay. And when we study the fossils, now if you see the picture on the side slide here, you can see that as you go deep into the soil, you will see that the remnants or the fossils of simpler organisms in the deep part, invertebrates, then pisces and amphibians in the upper layers of the soil, and mammals, aves, that is the birds, in the upper layer of the soil, you can get the imprints. Thus, it shows that evolution, the deeper you go into the soil, you get simpler organisms which were found in a very old era, and evolution has occurred through years and years or through centuries, and the development has occurred. So fossils, the study of fossils or the paleontological evidence, again is a very strong evidence of evolution of the complex organisms from simple ones. Is it becoming very heavy, dear friends? I think टेंशन लेने का नहीं देने का, ये तो बहुत इजी एस्पेक्ट है, बहुत मस्त एस्पेक्ट्स है ऑफ बायो, एंड दे आर वेरी वेरी यूजफुल फॉर यू. So study of fossils becomes a very important aspect for study of evolution. Now, how this study of fossils is done? The fossil studies, or how old these fossils are there, it can be studied with the help of carbon dating, which was discovered by Libby. And in that we understand very important concept that in any living organism there is the certain proportion of C14 and C12, that is carbon 14 and 12. Carbon 14 is a radioactive isotope of carbon, and after death it starts giving radioactive, it undergoes radioactive decay, and then by the carbon dating method we can get the exact date of the fossilization or submergence of that organisms. Thus, with carbon dating we can understand the age of fossils. The next is connecting links. Again, what is connecting links? Some plants or animals show some morphological characters which are actually related to two different groups or species. And such organisms are called connecting link between two different species. Example, you can see Peripatus here. Now, Peripatus has the common characteristics between the Annelida and the Arthropoda group. Thus, we can see that they were during evolution from one species to another species, certain organisms were formed during that phase of transition, which had common characteristics of both of them. Example, duck-billed platypus has characteristics common to both reptiles and mammalia. Thus, connecting links again is a strong evidence of evolution. Then, embryological evidence. Now, this is again a very important, interesting topic. If you see on the side screen here in the figure, you can see that different organisms are there and their embryos, development of embryo. What is the embryo after the zygote formation during sexual fertilization, or during fertilization, that is after the zygote is formed, it starts developing into embryos. Now, stage one, stage two, and stage three of embryo development of fish, salamander, tortoise, chicken, pig, cow, rabbit, and man are given to you. From the embryological evidence, you will see that stage one embryos of all these organisms are almost similar. It means that we had common ancestors and our development has also common developmental stages. Embryonic stages of development were almost common, and thus again this is a very strong evidence of evolution in all organisms. Now, all embryos show extreme similarities during the initial stages, as I talked about that. And as the development of embryo occurs further, the changes in characteristics or the embryos can be seen properly, and there is a decrease in similarities after certain stages. By stage 3, you can actually identify which is the embryo of which organism. So, this all was studied by Darwin, Charles Darwin, and he collectively called that as theory of natural selection. It is a nature, okay, which selects the best of the organisms and helps their development and further progress. Charles Darwin had actually collected innumerable species of plants and animals, and depending upon the observation of those organisms and specimens, he came to the conclusion that nature selects the best, and the concept was survival of the fittest. And this he published in Theory of Natural Selection in his book called Origin of Species. Thus, Darwin's theory has an important aspect, and Darwin's theory of evolution is the best suited theory of evolution for further development. Says that all organisms reproduce prolifically. Prolifically means what? In large numbers, means more than the carrying capacity of the world. All the organisms compete with each other for various resources in a life threatening manner. That is a cutthroat competition. There's always a competition. Even you know that we are working too hard for getting more and more marks, though this should not be the condition, but we are working for it because we know that our seat in a good college will depend upon our percentages. We don't insist on knowledge, we insist more on marks. But it should have been otherwise. We should have insisted on more of knowledge rather than marks. The When you have knowledge, the marks come by themselves. That you should always remember, bacha party. So in which so when he was talking about the competition among various organisms, he had shown that modifications are essentials for competition, and therefore evolution has occurred. Evolution has occurred only because the competition demands so. Example, we always say that we have to get good marks, but then what is the efforts you are putting, what are the efforts you will be putting for getting those good marks is very, very essential. So we should know that. So in this way, Darwin's theory was a very important theory talking about the natural selection of organisms. But there were certain objections to the theory of natural selection. First, natural selection is not the only factor responsible for evolution. There are various other factors too. Second, Darwin did not mention any explanation about useful and useless modification. If the modifications are occurring in an organism, then why they are occurring? What is the need for it? Why there are useless modifications too? But he could not explain. There is no explanation about slow changes and abrupt changes. Again, he failed to explain that. Irrespective of all these objections, Darwin's work was a big milestone in the history of biology and study of genetics. The next is Lamarckism. Jean Baptiste Lamarck also proposed one theory, which is called as Lamarck's theory of evolution. So he proposed that morphological changes occur in living organisms responsible for evolution, and reasons for this changes is the activities or the laziness of the organism. If they are lazy, certain or the organs will start becoming useless, and if you are active, certain organs will become more uh, built up or more developed. Example: those who are going in gym, especially the boys must be experiencing that, or those who are in active sports, their muscles are well built than other people who have flabby muscles because they were not working out too much. Similarly, here we can see the example of giraffe in the picture in the side slide. We can see that principle of use and disuse of organ has been explained in the example of giraffe in a very best or in a very nice manner. The earlier giraffes had a short neck, but the grass, or they are herbivorous animals, the grass was less, and therefore they had to depend on the leaves of the trees, but which were at a very great height. So they had to stretch their necks to get their food requirements. And as the evolution occurs from one generation to a next generation, the neck started stretching up, and now the modern giraffe has a very long neck. Okay, that is nothing but Lamarckism. So Lamarckism, the theory of Lamarckism was also accepted a little, but there was no much concrete evidence on that. Now comes to human evolution. Yes, human beings is again a very hot topic to discuss. Okay, human beings, how from ancestors which were more of ape-like, and then they have developed into a modern man. Okay, so monkey-like animals. Okay, they were evolved, and some ancestors of them have changed. Okay, okay, and we have developed from them. So human evolution is again from the monkey like lemurs and tarsiers, which were the earlier organisms. So the tail of these monkey like animals disappeared about 4 crore years ago, and the development occurred. They developed due to enlargement of brain, and the hands were also improved, and thus ape like animals were evolved. So ape like animals were evolved like this. Then from the ape-like animals, which were found, okay, or which reached the South and the Northeast Asia, and finally evolved into gibbons and orangutans. Remaining ape-like animals stayed in Africa, and from them, gorilla and chimpanzees evolved about 2.45 crore years ago. If you can go through these bullet points, you will understand the evolution of human beings was not a simple path. It was a very long, and it has crossed through many organisms. Evolution of some of the old species of apes occurred 2 crore years ago, and it has occurred in a very different manner. And then their hands were more developed. They started doing certain work with hand, and thus the human beings were formed. The first record of human like animals is with us in the form of Ramapithecus, that were the ape like forms of human beings. North India and East Africa were having such organism. Afterwards, this ape grew up in size and became more intelligent, and thus the ape of South Africa evolved, which was about 40 lakh years ago. Again, see the evolution, a very slow, a very gradual progress. the morphology of these human like animals started to appear like to be the member of the genus Homo sapiens 20 lakh years ago, and thus skilled humans developed. About 15 lakh years ago, human started walking with erect posture, and thus it was evolved. It may have existed in China and Indonesia of the Asian continent. Brain of 50,000 year old man had been sufficiently evolved, and then he was called as Homo sapiens. Homo is the genus of the organisms, that is, Homo sapiens is a scientific name of human being. Then comes the Neanderthal man, can be considered as a first example of wise man. Very important for our fill in the blanks also. So, for example of wise man is a Neanderthal man. Then the Cro-Magnon man evolved about 60,000 years ago, and afterwards the evolution has been faster than earlier. About 10,000 years ago, wise thinking man started to practice agriculture, and then the scientific and the physical and mental development and cultural development of human being has been at a very fast pace. Art of writing came around 6,000 years ago, and thus history has been recorded around that time. Modern man has, of course, gone through so much of evolution, and the real development of human beings has occurred. So you can see the Neanderthal man who was a wise thinking man or a wise man, and how he appeared and how the human being appears now. We can see that. In this way, the evolution has occurred. We'll be discussing certain questions on this topic. Now let's see certain type of questions which are important for us uh, during examination. Also, they are important for exams, and also the way of writing and presentation of those answers. Let's see the distinguish between uh, two things and two questions of distinction. The first is distinguish between transcription and translation. Transcription is a process of synthesis of mRNA from DNA, while translation is a process in which tRNA, having anticodon to the codon or against the codon of the mRNA, supplies amino acid as per the message of mRNA. Transcription occurs in the nucleus, while translation occurs in the cytoplasm. Transcription is a process of RNA synthesis, while translation is a process of protein synthesis. RNA polymerase catalyzes the transcription process, while translation is catalyzed by the ribosome, or the ribosome catalyzes the process. The next important distinction is Lamarckism and natural selection. In Lamarckism, all acquired characters are transferred to the next generation, while in natural selection, only useful modifications or variations are transferred to the next generation. Lamarckism is not based on survival of the fittest, while natural selection is based on the survival of the fittest. Lamarckism occurs due to morphological changes, while natural selection is due to modification of characters or characteristics. Lamarckism occurs due to continued activity or laziness of an organism, that is use and disuse theory, while natural selection occurs due to life threatening competition among organisms of the same or different species. Let us discuss now the next type of question, that is complete the following charts or tables or flow charts. Now, if you can see one example, complete the following diagram. Evidences of evolution. Two they have already given, that is morphological and similarities in bone structures. From morphology we can find that. So what we have to do is we have to complete the flow chart. Either they can give you one or two examples, they will fill the boxes, or they can keep the boxes empty. Now this is for 2 marks. Now, where you have to just complete the other part of the box, you have to draw the boxes with pencil and then write with pen inside them. So evidences of evolution,
when we have already been given morphological and structure similarities in bone structures, we can put embryological and paleontological as the other part of examples of evidences of evolution. Thus, the flow chart can be ready. So this is very easy and scoring way of scoring type of questions. You can get full marks for them in a short period of time.
so that you can get the idea of how to answer those questions. Really revise this chapter in a full form. So together we can and together we will. With Anubhavi Foundation, your mentor and guide, Dr. Sunil Kanal. Thank you very much and God bless you all.